Now, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission says this year's licensing round will begin in the third quarter of this year following approval from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources in line with the Petroleum Industry Act. Oyeyemi Oke, partner at AO2LAW, joins me now for more dynamic shaping the oil market and the prospects ahead. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Mr. Oke. What does this decision to launch another round so quickly after the ongoing 2025 oil licensing round signal about Nigeria's upstream investment strategy?
I think what comes to mind is that we have an aggressive government, an aggressive regulator that is willing to increase the barrels, right, with regards to production levels. That said, right, it also signals that there is interest, right, with regards to oil and gas assets in Nigeria. If you recall that the 2025-2026 bid rounds, the information in the market is that you have about 300 companies that have indicated interest for 50 assets, which shows you that it's a ratio of 6-to-1 with regards to interest in the asset. Now, we need to also be cautious, right, in as much as the regulators and the Nigerian government is aggressive with regards to ensuring that investments flow into the sector, one, and also ultimately flow into Nigeria. There has to be some type of balance to ensure that there is not what I would call asset overload in terms of availability of assets in the market, such that it may become counterproductive. Also, considering that government is yet to complete the bid rounds for 2025, which my understanding is that the commercial bids will start in July of this year. Government should also accelerate the completion of 2025 bid rounds before moving straight into the next set of bid rounds that would happen in Q3. So, in as much as it is good, government should also be cautious that there's no overload of assets within the market.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you talked about this scenario around possibly an overload. But I'd like us to take some lessons, expected reforms you think should be implemented to ensure that we have a stronger post-award performance. And then when we look at the attractiveness of our oil blocks here in Nigeria and comparing that to competing opportunities in the likes of Namibia, Angola, or even Guyana, how attractive would you say our oil blocks are today?
I think the first thing we should bear in mind is that oil that is produced from Nigeria is largely sweet, not heavy. So the refining process is not as cumbersome or not as bad as perhaps the type of oil you find in other jurisdictions, which for me, that's a plus for us. So what it means is that the oil produced from Nigeria definitely would always be attractive to investors. Right. With regards to the reforms which you mentioned, or what we can describe as intentionality with regards to government ensuring that the assets continue to produce, I think government has been quite strict with regards to what we call the drill or drop provisions for petroleum prospecting licenses, which means that if you do not meet the requirements under the relevant concession agreements or the relevant licensing terms, right, there will be no renewal after perhaps the first renewal. Now, as government started the process of ensuring that these provisions, both in the PIA and also in the concession agreements and the license terms are implemented, yes, there are some assets or some PPLs that have been renewed, right, early this year, some late last year. And government has been clear that after this renewal, right, if you do not bring the asset into production, if you do not meet your minimum work obligations and programs, then the assets will be revoked and taken away from you. There is the likelihood that considering the nature of the language of the PIA, there's no wiggle room. So if you do not produce or if you do not meet your minimum work programs, there's a likelihood that government would definitely take out, revoke the assets from the owners, and perhaps the assets go back to government basket for bidding again. So I think that's a good step in terms of the reforms which we've seen under the PIA and implementation on the part of the regulator as well.
But when you talk about the regulatory reform we've seen so far, now investors will continue to cite security concerns, crude theft, regulatory uncertainty as some of the major threats in our local market here. Would you say the reforms and policy initiatives have have sufficiently, I beg your pardon, address these concerns? And then when we look at the counter argument around Nigeria's production volume, do you see this round also support this 2 million barrels per day production agenda we are looking forward to achieving this year?
Okay, I think I'll start from the last question, right? One thing you should, or one thing we should bear in mind is that the more assets that are being given out, and the more gives it more possibility for companies or E&P companies to work the assets, right? Which eventually would increase the number of barrels that have been produced, which ultimately would add into the number of barrels that Nigeria as a nation is producing. Which answers your question to the fact that how will this positively affect the objective with regards to meeting the 2 million barrels per day objective or 2.2 million barrels per day objectives, right? If you have more assets that are producing, right, and more barrels are taken out from the ground, definitely the work towards the achievement of that objective will be met. So to answer your questions directly, yes, if you have more bid rounds, right, there's a possibility that production will definitely increase over time. I can't remember the other question you asked, but with regards to how government reforms are affecting, or the peculiarities of the government reforms affecting businesses in the upstream sector, I think about 5 years ago when the PIA was introduced, definitely there was need for clarifications. Regulations were issued by the Commission, and the Commission continues to issue regulations even as early as this year with regards to ensuring that the provisions of the PIA that perhaps are either unclear or that requires clarification there's some type of clarity, and also the regulator ensuring that there is no lacuna or gaps within the system. Obviously, we don't have the perfect system. Looking at some of the advice I've given in recent times, some of the new regulations that have been introduced, obviously, there are concerns around them. However, I think the E&P companies have been constructively engaging with the regulator, and the regulator is actually good.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Oke. That was Oyeyemi Oke, partner at AO2LAW.